Please like, follow, and subscribe for more stories from Terrifyingly Haunted. Iowa has a way of hiding its darkest stories in plain sight, inside brick walls, under old theaters, along river bridges, and in places where the ground itself feels restless. Tonight, we're counting down the top 10 haunted locations in Iowa, where people claim to have experienced everything from chilling cold spots to unexplained footsteps and feels like someone's there moments that don't fade when you leave. And the closer we get to the top, the more these stories shift from weird to how is this still happening? Let's begin. 10. Iowa State Penitentiary, Fort Madison. The Iowa State Penitentiary, known for its brutal history, has the kind of atmosphere that makes you speak quietly without realizing you're doing it. Many accounts focus on the immediate mood change people feel when they enter older cell blocks, a heaviness in the air, restless silence, and a sense of pressure on the skin. Visitors and tour guides often describe hearing knocks, faint banging or movement noises that seem to come and go, sometimes when no one is nearby. Some claims center on the idea that certain areas hold on to activity longer than others, like the building replays moments tied to confinement. And even years after incarceration-era practices ended, people report that the place doesn't feel empty. It feels occupied in a way that's hard to explain. 9. Old Mill and Milling District, Cedar Rapids. Cedar Rapids' older milling areas carry a historical backbone, industry, labor, and constant motion. But in ghost stories, that machinery-era energy becomes something else, something that lingers long after the mills change hands or go quiet. Accounts frequently mention footsteps that don't match the visitor's position, as if someone else is pacing the same paths. People also report sudden chills in corridors and near older brickwork, along with the sense that the space is alive in short bursts, like a presence flickers into awareness, then disappears. Some stories claim activity clusters around passageways and lower levels, where the architecture channels sound and makes every creak feel personal. Whether it's a lingering memory of work or something that refuses to let the area rest, the recurring theme is that the milling district doesn't feel like a relic. It feels like a routine still continues somewhere out of sight. 8. Crescent Park, Waterloo. Crescent Park has that unsettling balance of beauty and eeriness. On the surface, it's peaceful. Then people start describing the moments that don't add up. Witness reports often involve moving lights or flashes that seem to appear from angles that don't make sense. Some claim they'll walk through a section of the park, feel the air temperature drop, and then notice a strange shift, like the space becomes watchful. Stories also mention echoes, sounds that travel farther than they should or appear delayed, as if the park is messing with distance. There are also recurring claims of childlike sounds, light echoes, small footsteps, or brief bursts of noise that vanish when someone turns. Locals often frame it as a place where the landscape holds memories that surface at night with enough clarity to feel real. 7. Davenport, abandoned spots, local legend sites, and reflection-heavy areas. Davenport's lore leans heavily into the idea that haunting prefers certain conditions: emptiness, silence, and lines of sight. Many accounts focus on abandoned structures and hard-to-spot locations, where reflections, shadows, and broken sight lines create the perfect setup for fear. People describe seeing figures in reflections, not always solid, but undeniably present in the moment they look. There are also stories about doors closing without obvious airflow, along with the sense that someone is moving through rooms that don't connect the way the layout suggests. Some claim they hear footsteps walking ahead of them, only to turn and find the path empty. What stands out in many Davenport tales is that the haunting behaves like it's aware of attention. It's not just random noise. The reports often suggest it responds to being looked at, appearing most clearly in mirrors, windows, and polished surfaces, then slipping away when people try to confirm it. 6. Dubuque River District, Bridge areas and waterfront. Night activity. River towns can feel haunted simply because they amplify everything: wind, echo, distant traffic, and the way darkness settles over water. In Dubuque, the River District stories often center on bridges and the stretch where the air feels colder than it should. Witnesses frequently mention whispers or muffled voices carried by wind, as if sound is being dragged across the river. Footsteps are another common report. People claim they hear pacing nearby, even when they're alone and don't see anyone. Some accounts describe a strange optical shift. Headlights or flashlights briefly illuminate empty space. Then the target disappears or seems to relocate faster than human movement could explain. Bridge lore also includes the feeling that distance becomes unreliable. People report stepping forward, then feeling like they've moved closer to something standing just out of view. It's the kind of haunting that doesn't always demand attention, but it ensures you feel watched the entire time you're trying to understand what you heard. 5. Orpheum Theatre, Sioux City. A theatre is a machine for anticipation, seats waiting, curtains held back, hallways built for crowds. So when the Orpheum Theatre is described as haunted, it often carries a very specific emotional tone, like the building is staging something even when nobody is inside. Accounts commonly feature murmurs or crowd-like sounds in areas where the room should be silent, especially around backstage areas and hallways. People also describe lights flickering or behaving oddly during quiet moments, with the disturbing part being that the behavior doesn't match what maintenance issues would explain. Then there are the chills. Visitors report feeling sudden temperature drops in corridors and dressing room zones, along with the sensation that someone is standing just around a corner. Theatre hauntings often feel theatrical in the reports, footsteps sounding timed, shadows moving with the logic of entrances and exits. The building feels like it's remembering performances long after the lights go out for good. 4. Macocata Caves and surrounding areas. Caves are already a fear amplifier. They trap sound, stretch echoes, and make every glow feel too bright. In the Macocata Cave region, stories intensify in the dark, where the underground environment creates a haunting that feels both near and impossible. Reports frequently mention unexplained sounds deep underground, knocks, dragging-like noises, or sudden bursts of activity that don't echo the way footsteps should. People also describe strange lights or glows, sometimes brief, sometimes lingering, long enough to be frightening. A common theme is directional confusion. Witnesses claim something seems to move closer, even though the path remains unchanged. Some stories include silhouettes, forms that appear for a moment, then disappear like the cave itself swallowed them. The unsettling element isn't just what people see or hear. It's the feeling that the cave answers back, like the underground space is reacting to visitors rather than simply echoing them. 3. The Old French House. Dubuque historic houses don't just hold history, they hold routines, habits, and personal space. The Old French House is one of those structures where architecture and age create natural mystery, but the paranormal accounts add a darker layer. Witnesses commonly describe cold spots in particular rooms, places where the temperature drops sharply compared to nearby areas. Some also report scratching or movement sounds, often heard when the house is otherwise quiet. There are accounts of the sense of presence, standing somewhere and suddenly feeling that someone is there, just out of sight. A repeated theme in old French house stories is how the mood shifts room to room. People describe stepping into one area and feeling tense, then entering the next and feeling watched differently, as if the house holds multiple pockets of activity. In these accounts, it's not a single ghost caught in one location. It's a presence that seems to have patterns, preferences, and limits. 2. Wiki Uphill and Battlefield Adjacent Haunted Folklore. Where conflict happened, folklore often takes root, and in parts of Iowa tied to historic tensions, people say the land never fully stopped remembering. Stories around Wickiup Hill and nearby historic grounds commonly mention disturbing dreams and an intense sense of unease that lingers after leaving. Witnesses also report feeling watched from higher ground, like someone or something is positioned to observe without being visible. There are accounts of signs of disturbance, brush moved, evidence that something recently happened, even when people can't confirm how or why. Some tell of hearing sounds carried by wind at night, vague calling, movement noises, or the sharp feeling that the darkness has direction. This entry is less about spectacle and more about dread, an atmosphere that escalates quickly, then stays with you. The haunting is often described as tied to place and memory, not just a random, unexplained event. 1. Amana colonies, nighttime legends in historic sites. If Iowa has a top-tier haunting story, many people point to the Amana colonies. The history here isn't just museum history, it's embedded in the buildings, pathways, and community layout that still shapes how the area feels. Accounts often describe a haunting that's quiet but overwhelming, stillness that doesn't feel natural, air that turns colder near certain historic structures, and moments where visitors feel a presence behind them despite hearing nothing. People report faint voices or distant echoes, sounds that feel almost human, but too unclear to confirm. Others describe footsteps that appear in patterns that don't match walking routes or timing. What makes the Amana stories stand out is the contrast. This is a place known for careful order and calm, so when the night brings activity, when the peaceful vibe breaks, it hits harder. Witnesses sometimes say it feels less like a ghost wants attention, and more like the past is reclaiming control of the space after dark. And that brings us to the end of the countdown, 10 haunted locations in Iowa, where the scariest part is often consistency, cold spots that repeat, sounds that return, and presences that show up in the same kinds of places again and again. If you enjoyed this countdown, hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned, because Iowa has more darkness than most people realize, and the best stories never stay buried for long.